I'm going to do a video here in which I show you part of my collection, namely all my albums and records with Australian British group, instrumental group Sky, who were active in the late 70s and 80s. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they had a very quite famous lineup with great musicians that had made themselves names even before they joined Sky. We had the classical guitar player John Williams. We have the great bass session player Herbie Flowers, who plays the famous bass line on the Lou Reed hit Walk on White Side. That's Herbie Flowers. And he also played with some groups. I think was Blue Mink one of them. I'm not sure. Also, we have a great guitar player Kevin Peake, the drummer drummer Tristan Fry, and also from the band Curved Air we have Francis Monkman. So this was the first album. It's called Sky. Oh, it has a name written. I don't like it. This was issued in 1979 on Areola, and it's amazing stuff. It has this rather boring grey Areola label, but the music isn't boring at all. We have 6 tracks on this one, some original compositions and also a couple of adaptations of classical music. One of them is Erik Satie's Gem the PD #1, and some great instrumental music. The second side is a piece that, well, it fills the whole side. It's a piece called Where Opposite Meets. It's composed by Francis Monkman, who is a great musician and a great composer. And there's not a weak track on this first album, Sky. And I also have I showed this before, a Soviet issue of the same label, Ensemble Sky. This was issued in 1982 on the Melodia label. It's the same record though, same album. Their greatest commercial success was the second album they made, Sky 2. And this was issued on Areola. There's an American version that's only called Sky. The American version was the first one that was issued in the United States, and it has the same sleeve artwork, which is very beautiful. All the Sky albums have nice sleeves, but it has this Sky written here instead, and no two at all, just Sky. It has also very beautiful label, custom label, much more interesting than a grey Areola label. This is blue, yellow and red. Well, it's like a rainbow. And this one has got some of their most famous hits, so to speak. Among those, a version of Johann Sebastian Bach's Toccata, which in my view is one of the weaker tracks on this double album. It's a double album. But we also have the great groove, Jota, that is based on a rhythm that's almost like the Spanish folk dance, Jota, but not really. But I think they got it from pressing 2 different rhythm buttons down on the rhythm box of an old electric organ. And we have the Dance of the Little Fairies, that has the 5/4 time signature. That's quite interesting. And also the great number Sahara. Page 2, side 2 is consists of a 17-minute long music piece called FIFO, FIFO, first in, first out. I think that's a short for. That's in 4 different parts. And the third side begins with a kind of novelty number that became a bit of their. I mean, they had some quite complex music on these albums, but also they had some joking number or some number that anybody could play. And here we have a live recording of a music piece called Tuba Smarties, composed by the bass player Herbie Flowers, who was also a tuba player. He played the tuba in the army before he started playing the electric bass. And he's accompanied by Francis Monkman on the piano and Tristan Fry on the trumpet. Well, he denies it. Tristan Fry denies on the cover that it's him playing the trumpet because it sounds quite awful. Still, it's a fun number. And all in all, this is a very good double album. Just as good as the first album, but longer, of course. And I also have a maxi single that's maybe a bit, or a 30 centimeter 45 RPM single, a super sound single as it's called Dies Irae. And on the flip side we have March to the Scaffold, and this was probably recorded at the same time as Sky 2. Dies Irae is a composition by Francis Monkman. The label, for those of you interested, looks like that. After this album, Francis Monkman left Sky, and in my book that was a pity, because, well, Sky changed after that. They didn't become instantly worse, but they changed. I think Francis Monkman is a great and interesting composer. He makes interesting music. And the guy who took over was Steve Gray, who's also great. I mean, in his own way, but he's more of a jazzier-oriented musician. Francis Monkman was more proggy. So Steve Gray, the late Steve Gray, joined for Sky 3. That came in 1981, also on Areola. This is what it looks like, and I'll show you the label too. Looks like that. This album is a bit different than Sky 1 and Sky 2, obviously because Francis Monkman is not longer a member of the group, but still, it's good. Steve Gray joins and presents some nice compositions. All in all, the whole album has a very high quality. I think it sold worse than the Sky 2, but it's still a great album. I think Steve Gray did a good job taking over after Francis Monkman on this one. But and there are some adaptations of classical composers as well, just like Handel's Salamander. And there's the novelty number Dance of the Big Fairies here, not the Dance of the Little Fairies. It's Dance of the Big Fairies. All in all, great album. A bit different than number 2, but still a great album. Then we have number 4. Sky 4 looks like this. Very nice cover. Or Forthcoming is the subtitle here. And this album contains only of adaptations of classical music pieces, like Khachaturian's Masquerade and March to the Scaffold by Berlioz, and even a piece from Mikis Theodorakis, and some Bach and Villalobos, and even a version of Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries. The problem is, if you compare it to the earlier albums, this is a bit bland and uninspired, and I would say that the Ride of the Valkyries maybe played a bit as a joke here, but it's not really funny. This is a big step down if you compare it to the earlier ones, even if it has a nice lead. And if it wasn't for the fact that they made the closing number of this album, I mean, I could have showed this album in the video I did for Brett about killer album closers. I should have, but I forgot it. But I can mention it now. The last track of this album is a version of Hoagy Carmichael's Skylark. Well, first of all, I think Hoagy Carmichael is the best popular music composer of the 20th century. And when it was around when we switched millennia, they didn't even mention Hoagy Carmichael because, well, they talked about Paul McCartney, they talked about Bob Dylan, of course, who are great, they are geniuses, but still, they didn't really mention any music from before 1963. And that's a big pity, because I think Hoagy Carmichael was the greatest popular music composer of all. And when this record was recorded in 1982, Hoagy Carmichael passed away, and they decided to do a tribute to Hoagy Carmichael to end this album. And that album, that recording of Skylark saves this whole album from being a total dud. If I have to listen to one track from this album, it's Skylark. It's great. It's so sensitive. Some people would say, what does a jazz number like Skylark, why is that on a Sky album? Well, why not? Tell me, why aren't there Hoagy Carmichael songs on every album? Yeah, at least one. Right, that was Sky 4. Well, next album, time for the live album. All groups have some sort of live album, and this is Sky 5 Live, also on Areola. Also with a very nice sleeve like this. Show you the label even. We're back to the grey boring label now. And this is a live recording. Let's see, it's from 1983, I think. And it's recorded in Melbourne, in Perth, in Adelaide, and in Sydney. So it's taken from different concerts. And we have live versions of Dance of the Little Fairies, done in a bit more joking manner, and also Sahara and Mexico, and the final closing number is a live version of Hota, with one of the longest drum solos I've ever heard, probably too long. Tristan Fry was a great drummer, or is a great drummer, but drum solos isn't really his thing. Also, we have nice adaptations of Saint-Saëns' The Swan, and also some original compositions like KP1 and KP2 by Kevin Peake, and The Animals by Herbie Flowers and Steve Gray, and Love Do It by Steve Gray. This is a step in the right direction. It's much better than Sky 4, and they are inspired playing in front of the live audience. We also have the bit of a comedy number, the Bathroom Song by Herbie Flowers. So this is a step in the right direction. Sky 5 Live. After this album, they stopped numbering them, and the next one is from 1983, and it's called cadmium, this yellow, very sparsely here. And this was also the last album where John Williams played with the sky. I'll show you the nice yellow label here. Yeah. After Cadmium in 1984, this compilation album was issued called Masterpieces, the very best of Sky. It's also an areola, and well, it has the boring grey label, but it's with material taken from the 6 issued Sky albums. Well, John Williams had now left Sky, and Areola's interest in Sky dropped, and they dropped Sky. So the next album was issued on a different label. It was issued on Epic, and instead of taking in another guitar player directly for John Williams, they continued as a 4-piece band, but they also had some guest musicians like saxophone player Ron Asbury, guitar player Lee Fothergill, and others. And the album that they released in 1985 is called The Great Balloon Race. I like the title track, composed by Herbie Flowers, very much. But alas, I have to say that this was a bit of a disappointment when I found it. It's lacking in inspiration, and it's quite dull. Especially if you compare it to the early Sky albums, it's quite dull. And also, it didn't sell well. So this is an album that's quite hard to find. It took me several years before I found a copy of it. And there's one more vinyl album by Sky that was issued in 1987, I think. It's called Mozart. I still haven't found that one. But I read somewhere that it was very successful in United States, or very successful, quite the most successful commercially for Sky in United States. I haven't seen it, so I'm not sure. I've also read some said that it was horrible record, and some say it was a masterpiece. So I'm trying to find that one. I haven't found it yet, because I really want to form my own opinion about it. Because, well, The Great Balloon Race, nice sleeve as it has, but quite boring if you compare it to the earlier ones. And John Williams was missed. This is uninspired. The early Sky albums, up until number 4, they are very inspired. And then they have their ups and downs. Okay, I think I've talked enough now about Sky, and I hope somebody found it slightly interesting. Bye-bye.